Welcome to our deep dive into the fascinating world of language. I
Thank
think
you.
we've got some really interesting stuff to get into today, right? Like, we have all these research articles and expert opinions,
Hey, it's delicious.
and they're all about how words can impact us
Right.
in ways that we don't always think about.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was reading about how being exposed to certain words,
Hmm.
especially like negative words, can actually activate the pain centers in our brains.
What, really?
Yeah, it's true.
So, like, if I'm constantly complaining about how much my back hurts,
Uh-huh.
does that mean it's actually, like, making the pain worse?
Well, that's what some brain imaging studies are suggesting.
Wow.
It seems like those negative words can really intensify those signals that are already present in those brain centers.
So then does that mean that, like, if we use more positive language,
Mm-hmm.
that it could actually have, like, a beneficial effect on us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, think about like how encouraging words can really boost your confidence
Right.
and help you overcome all sorts of challenges.
Yeah.
There was this one study that found that people who practiced like positive self-talk while they were doing a physical task,
Okay.
they actually performed better.
That's wild. I mean, it really makes you think twice about how you talk to yourself, you know?
Absolutely.
But I was reading that it's not always just about the literal meaning of the words themselves.
Right.
Context plays a big role, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Context is huge.
Okay.
I mean, the context surrounding a word can trigger all sorts of different responses.
Yeah.
For example, let's think about the word challenge.
Okay. Challenge.
Yeah. If someone says, "Oh, I'm really up for the challenge,"
Yeah. Yeah.
that sounds exciting, right? Motivating.
Yeah.
But if someone says, "Ooh, this is going to be such a challenge," it's like
Totally different vibe.
totally different vibe.
Yeah.
And so it just highlights how important clear communication is.
Hmm.
You know, we need to be aware not just of the words themselves,
Yeah, right.
but also like how we're saying them
Yeah.
and all of that information that's around it that gives it meaning.
Yeah. It's like those times when you completely misinterpret a text message
Mhm.
because you're missing like the full context.
Oh, totally.
It happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
So much miscommunication.
It's so easy to misinterpret things.
But here's something that I thought was really fascinating.
Okay.
I was reading that even the sound of certain words
Yeah.
can affect us
Mm.
before we even know what they mean.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think there was a study.
Yeah.
It was done at Cornell University,
Okay.
and they were looking at how like different sound combinations
Mm.
can actually evoke emotional responses in people. And they found that the word virus, for example,
Uh-huh.
often caused people's blood pressure to rise. And this was even before like the whole COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't even like a learned association.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like an evolutionary reason for that.
Yeah.
Like maybe certain sounds were associated with danger throughout like human history,
Right.
and those reactions are kind of like embedded in us still.
Yeah, like it's hardwired into us.
Wow. I'm curious, are there any words that like instantly make you feel uneasy just from their sound?
That's a good question.
Eh.
It's funny because now I'm going to be thinking about it every time I say a word.
Right.
Like, what's my blood pressure doing?
I know, me too.
But it is interesting to think about.
Yeah.
It makes you realize just how much is going on
Right.
beneath the surface
Yeah.
when we're communicating. But let's maybe shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about how words can be used to persuade
Oh, yeah.
and influence others.
Mm.
This is where I think things get really interesting.
Totally. This is like marketing 101.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
like marketing 101, but it's even bigger than that.
Mm.
It's really about understanding how word choice,
Okay.
the way information is presented,
Right.
and even things like figures of speech,
Mm.
they can all impact how effective we are at getting our message across.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed like those weight loss ads?
Uh-huh.
They always emphasize what you'll miss out on.
If you don't buy their product.
Oh, yeah, all the time. It's like they're playing on our fear of missing out.
Exactly.
It's so effective.
I think that's why it's so much more effective
Mm.
than just focusing on like the positive things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that mean that we're like more motivated to avoid pain than we are to seek pleasure?
It seems like in many cases.
Wow.
Yes. But that's why I think it's so important
Yeah.
to be aware of these techniques,
Right.
both so we can use them ethically
Right.
and also so that we can recognize them when they're being used on us.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've all experienced the power of words firsthand.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a single kind word can completely make your day.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, a hurtful comment can stick with you for years.
Oh, it's true. It's remarkable how words can have both positive and negative effects.
Yeah.
There's actually research that's shown that expressing your emotions through writing
Okay.
can be incredibly therapeutic. It can help you process trauma and gain new perspectives.
I've heard that. It's like getting those feelings out of your head and
Yeah.
onto paper can be really healing.
Yeah, like you're releasing them.
Almost.
Yeah.
But then there's also been studies
Uh-huh.
that show that verbal abuse can have like a lasting psychological consequence.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like,
Yeah, increased anxiety, fear of assertiveness, and they've even seen physical changes in the brain
wow.
as a result of verbal abuse.
It's a good reminder to be really mindful of the language that we use towards others.
Absolutely.
It makes you think about that whole idea of mindful communication.
It does. It really does. Mindful communication is all about paying attention to our thoughts, our feelings, and our intentions when we speak.
Okay.
But it's also about actively listening to others.
Yeah, that sounds simple enough.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it takes a lot of effort to put that into practice.
It does. It requires conscious effort.
Oh.
But the benefits are huge.
Yeah, what are they?
Well, mindful communication can lead to stronger relationships,
Okay.
deeper self-understanding, and it can even increase your happiness.
Wow. So what are some practical steps
Well,
that we can take to become more mindful communicators?
one really effective strategy is to become more aware of our language patterns. Like, for example, try to replace negative phrases like, "that's not my job,"
Yeah.
with more positive alternatives.
Like, I can help you find the right person for that.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective
Yeah.
and focusing on solutions rather than problems.
Okay. It's making me think about my own communication style
Mhm.
and how I can be more mindful. How about you? I mean, what are some ways that you try to practice mindful communication in your daily life?
You know, it's a good question. I think it's an ongoing process for all of us.
Right.
But simply being aware of the power of words
Yeah.
is a fantastic first step.
And speaking of the power of words, let's not forget about how they can be agents of social change.
Right.
Like, think about Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech.
Right.
I mean, his words resonated with millions of people
Yeah.
and helped to fuel the entire civil rights movement.
It's amazing how words can have that kind of impact.
Yeah. And it's not just speeches either.
Right.
Like, written works can also be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
Like Upton Sinclair's The Jungle.
Yeah.
I mean, that book exposed the horrific conditions in the meatpacking industry.
It did.
And that actually led to some major reforms
It's true.
in food safety regulations.
Yeah. It's incredible how words can literally change the course of history.
It makes you reflect on how words are being used today to advocate for equality, to raise awareness,
Yeah.
and to drive positive change in the world.
It's a powerful reminder that our words really do have the potential to make a difference.
They do.
And that wraps up part one
Okay.
of our deep dive
Sounds good.
into the impact of language.
Welcome back to our deep dive
Yeah.
into this fascinating world of language.
Amazing.
It's really incredible how much we've already uncovered
Yeah.
about how words can affect
Right.
not just our communication, but our brains and our bodies,
Uh-huh.
and even society as a whole.
Yeah. We've only just scratched the surface, I think,
Yeah.
of this vast and intricate topic.
Well, I'm ready for more. We were talking about how words can be used
Right.
to persuade and influence others,
Uh-huh.
but what about the ethical implications of that?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like there's a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely. There's a lot to consider. I mean, while we can use words to inspire and uplift,
Right?
we can also use them to manipulate and deceive.
Yeah.
It's a sobering thought, but it's an important one to consider.
It is. It really makes you realize how important it is to
Yeah.
be a critical thinker and a careful listener,
Yeah.
especially today when we're constantly being bombarded with
What-
information from all sides.
It's true. How do we even develop a sort of BS detector
Yeah,
for language?
right.
That's the question.
Ex-
Well, one thing I always look out for is like emotionally charged language.
Mhm.
You know, words that are designed to evoke strong feelings,
Yeah,
like fear, anger, or excitement.
right.
Sometimes those words can be used to kind of bypass our rational thinking.
It's like those clickbait headlines you see everywhere online.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the ones that say, "You won't believe what happened next."
Exactly.
They're just designed to get you to click,
Right.
even if the content isn't actually that interesting.
Exactly. It's all about grabbing your attention,
Yeah,
often at the expense of accuracy
right.
or substance.
Right. So how can we become more savvy consumers of information?
Mm.
How can we protect ourselves from this kind of manipulation?
Well, I think knowledge is definitely power in this case.
Yeah.
The more we understand the techniques that are being used,
Right.
the better we can discern, when language is being used to mislead or exploit us.
It's like we need to arm ourselves
Yeah.
with the right tools to navigate this world of words. But shifting gears a little bit,
Okay.
I'm also really curious about how language can be used
Yeah.
to create or reinforce power dynamics.
That's an important one.
Yeah, it feels like a really important aspect of this whole discussion.
It is incredibly important. I mean, think about the language that's often used
Okay.
to describe different social groups.
Yeah.
Many times the words we use,
Mhm.
they reflect underlying biases and stereotypes,
Right.
whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that it's like certain words or phrases are
Okay.
used to portray certain groups in a negative light,
Uh-huh.
and that often perpetuates these harmful stereotypes.
It's a subtle but pervasive form of prejudice
Yeah,
that can have significant impact on how we perceive and treat others.
right.
Language can be a tool for oppression, even if unintentionally.
But it can also be a tool for liberation, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like words can be used to challenge those power structures
Uh-huh.
and advocate for a more just and equitable world.
For sure. I mean, think about the countless movements for social justice
Mhm.
throughout history.
Yeah.
They've often been fueled by powerful language
Right.
that has inspired people to stand up and fight for change.
The words of leaders and activists like Martin Luther King Jr.,
Yes.
Nelson Mandela, and so many others, I mean, they've resonated with people across generations
It's true.
and continue to inspire us today.
Yeah, their words have helped to dismantle oppressive systems and create a more inclusive and equitable society.
Yeah.
It's a powerful testament to the transformative potential of language.
It really is. It makes you appreciate how words can literally change the world.
It's true.
But on a more personal level,
Yeah.
I'm also fascinated by the idea that language can shape our own identities.
How so?
How does that work?
Well, it's a fascinating concept. The words we use to describe ourselves
Huh?
and the words that others use to describe us,
Right.
they have a profound impact
Okay.
on how we see ourselves
Yeah.
and our place in the world.
It's almost like language can create a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Uh-huh.
You know, if we're constantly being told we're not good enough,
Yeah.
those words can become internalized
Right.
and actually limit our potential.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
But conversely, if we're surrounded by positive and affirming language,
Yeah.
it can actually boost our confidence
Uh-huh.
and help us achieve our goals.
So how can we use language to create a more positive and empowering self-image?
Well, one powerful technique is practicing self-compassion. So instead of beating ourselves up with negative self-talk,
Yeah.
we can try to speak to ourselves with the same kindness and understanding
Right.
that we would offer to a close friend.
I love that. It's like being our own best friend
Exactly.
and cheerleader.
Yeah. We all deserve our own love and support.
And we do.
And speaking of positive self-talk,
Okay.
affirmations can also be incredibly helpful.
Oh, yeah, affirmations. I've heard about this.
Yeah.
So this is like repeating positive statements about ourselves.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
How does that work?
Well, they can actually help reprogram our subconscious minds
Wow.
and shift our beliefs about ourselves.
Interesting.
So by repeatedly affirming positive qualities or aspirations,
Okay.
we can gradually begin to internalize those beliefs and make them a reality.
It's like planting seeds of positivity in our minds
They
that can
prob-
grow over time.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that the words we choose not only reflect our present,
Right.
but also shape our future.
That's a really powerful thought.
It is.
It really makes you want to choose your words carefully.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good place to pause for.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground in this part.
We have, but there's still more to explore.
Yeah.
In our final part, we'll delve into some practical tips
Love.
for harnessing the power of language for good.
Welcome back to the deep dive. It's really remarkable how much we've learned
Yeah.
about the power of language in just these couple parts. I mean,
It's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. From how words can influence our brains
right.
to how they shape our perceptions of ourselves
Yeah.
and the world around us. It seems like they really have a profound impact.
They really do.
Yeah.
And while we've talked about a lot of different aspects of language,
Mm.
I think it's important to come back to a key point,
Okay.
which is that words can be both healing and harmful.
Yeah, that's true.
This duality is really central to understanding their impact.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword. Right. The same words that can inspire and uplift
Yeah.
can also wound and tear down.
Precisely. And think about the power of positive affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
Studies have shown that just by repeating positive statements about ourselves,
Okay.
we can actually alter our brain chemistry,
Wow.
leading to an improved mood and a greater sense of well-being.
So it's almost like we're reprogramming our minds
Yeah.
with this positive language.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a really powerful technique.
But then on the flip side, like negative self-talk
Yeah.
can be so damaging. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It can contribute to anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
and even manifest in physical health issues.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to be mindful, I think, of the stories that we tell ourselves
Absolutely.
and the language that we use in our own inner dialogue.
Right.
I think we have more control over our thoughts than we sometimes realize.
We do. And this mindful approach to language extends to our interactions with others as well. The words that we choose can have a big impact
Okay.
on how people feel and how they perceive themselves.
Yeah, I mean, for example, there's a big difference between telling someone you're so clumsy
Right.
versus saying, like, it's okay, accidents happen.
Exactly. The first phrase is judgmental and hurtful,
Yeah.
while the second one is more understanding and compassionate.
Right. It's amazing how such a subtle shift in language can make such a big difference
It is.
in how a message is received.
It really highlights the importance of choosing our words thoughtfully.
Mm.
We need to be aware of the potential impact our words can have.
On other people,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're dealing with sensitive topics
Right.
or navigating difficult conversations.
Yeah. So what are some tips for navigating those trickier conversations where maybe emotions are running high?
Well, one crucial principle is active listening
Okay.
and empathetic listening.
Mm-hmm.
Really trying to understand the other person's perspective,
Right.
even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah, it's like stepping into their shoes and trying
Yes.
to see the world from their point of view.
Exactly.
That can be challenging,
It can.
but it's so important for building understanding and connection.
It is.
Yeah.
And along with that, using I statements
Okay.
to express your own feelings and needs can be really valuable.
So instead of blaming or accusing the other person,
Right.
we focus on just expressing our own experience.
Exactly. Like, for example, instead of saying, you're always late,
Yeah.
you could say, I feel frustrated when I'm left waiting. You're shifting the focus from blame to expressing your personal experience.
Right. That's a much more constructive approach, I think.
It is.
It allows for more open and honest conversation.
Exactly. And, we're all learning. I'm still learning about mindful communication.
And me too, clearly.
The important thing is to be aware of the power of language
Yeah.
and to try to use it in a way
Right.
that is positive, constructive, and compassionate.
This deep dive has been a really fascinating journey, exploring how language affects us in so many ways.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
And remember, the words we choose
Yeah.
not only reflect our present, but they also shape our future.
That's a really thought-provoking statement. I want to thank you so much for joining us
It's been a pleasure.
on this deep dive into the impact of language, and we hope you'll continue to explore this fascinating world of words
Absolutely.
and how they shape our world.